Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Main Street Management 101. My name is Kristen Lopez. I am the Education and Training Director here at Connecticut Main Street Center. So today we're all talking about Main Street management, and sometimes people think that it's really all about planning events, some flower planters, making things look pretty with banners, but there's actually a lot more to Main Street management. It's an economic development strategy. So here at Connecticut Main Street Center, we've developed a Main Street management assessment tool, and we actually look at 85 different action items that Main Street managers should have a pulse on. So there's a lot to do. The most high-performing main streets that we see here in Connecticut and across the country are working with property owners and investors, making development happen, and are thinking strategically about their role in economic development. But how does that happen? How do we get there? So that's what we're going to dive into today. But before we do that, let's have a few words about who we are. So Connecticut Main Street Center is the expert resource for developing and sustaining vibrant downtowns and main streets that fuel our state's prosperity. It is our mission to assess, educate, and convene around these topics, central to creating a thriving downtown so that main streets all around the state can develop, grow, and prosper. We are very grateful for our sponsors and funding partners that make this work possible. Our founding sponsors are Eversource and the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, and our growth sponsors are Avangrid and the State Historic Preservation Office. Our educational programs are sponsored by Webster Bank and Avangrid, with thanks to our corporate investors Penn Globe and Capital for Change. Connecticut Main Street Center also has important strategic partnerships, including our partnership with FHI Studio, our AICP certification maintenance provider. So note to planners, this webinar is approved for 1 CM credit. Please fill out the evaluation when you leave this webinar. So some quick housekeeping notes. This will be about an hour long. We'll stop for questions at the end, but please feel free to use the chat function and enter questions as we go. And when you leave the webinar, you'll be prompted to fill out an evaluation survey. Please fill it out. It really helps us develop meaningful educational programs for you. So we all know a great downtown when we see it. It's a feeling. There's an energy we can sense, see, experience, but sometimes it can be hard to actually articulate what makes a main street so great. But we've actually broken it down into 6 qualities that makes it a little bit easier to grasp. So first, it starts with dedicated main street management. You're going to hear a lot about this today in this presentation, but it starts with dedicated main street management. The main street is connected by multiple modes of transportation for people to access easily. It's welcoming, friendly, and inclusive. Sustainable practices bring life and vibrancy for today and for the future. And small businesses are supported and encouraged, as well as big development investment. And there is a unique sense of place. So how do we cultivate these qualities? Well, that's where the 4 points of Main Street management come into play. It is a proven framework to follow that has been used for decades across the country. So as mentioned before, we have a Main Street management assessment tool that we use that examines 85 different aspects of Main Street management. We're not going to go into depth on each of those points, but the goal of you today is for you to become familiar with the 4 points and to start developing a Main Street lens through the 4 points, because it's a really great framework for you to see the work that you're doing to revitalize your downtown. And so what are the 4 points? You can see them here in the inner circle on this diagram. They are organization, economic vitality, design, and promotion. So where do these come from? Let's just do a quick historical grounding of where these originated. So in the late 1970s, the National Trust for Historic Preservation developed a pilot program designed to address the neglect and demolition of historic downtowns. They found that downtowns had lost their value in these 4 distinct areas: economic value, physical value, social value, and civic value. And that was due to land use policy, the rise of autos, and suburban sprawl. So this Main Street approach was developed to address the restoration of these values while simultaneously providing a framework to guide the revitalization efforts. Every community and commercial district is different with its own distinctive assets and history and sense of place. But the Main Street approach through these 4 points that we're going over today provides a very practical, adaptable framework for any downtown to use to transform their district that's tailored to their local conditions. So as I mentioned here in the very beginning, we want to have some participation from you guys today. So let's get used to using that chat box and tell us, how familiar are you with the 4 points? Do you use them every day? Are you familiar but don't follow them? I don't think so. Or you have no clue? No clue. Okay, great. We got some no clues. Perfect. This will be a great kind of grounding for you. Here, excellent, excellent. Love it. Use them every day. We can hear from you. Let's hear your experience as well. Awesome. Thanks, guys, for this participation. So how this webinar is going to work, we're going to go through each of the 4 points, and you can look at kind of each of the 4 the slides that we have as mini assessments that you can do yourself. So I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions and thinking through certain areas. And then we're going to show a video from Main Street America organization. They have these great American Main Street Awards, and they have these great videos of case studies from around the country that really kind of highlight a point that we're going to explain. So when we go through each of those videos, I'll love to hear your reflections on those in the chat. So let's dive into it. First things first is organization. And we're starting here because this is really the bedrock of everything. This is about restoring civic value. So this is engaging community stakeholders, public and private partners to all get on the same page and work towards a vision for our downtown. It's creating plans, it's getting the resources to do the work, and it's doing the work and sharing it out. So let's break them down into these actionable areas of focus. And again, feel free to take some notes, and you can see this as kind of a mini self-assessment on how you're doing right now. First thing is community stakeholder support. So are your community stakeholders that have a role in the downtown, are you on the same page for the vision and direction of your downtown? We've seen this happen time and time again where there's multiple players and they are not on the same page. And guess what? Progress does not happen. You really need to have a solidified vision and direction for where you're going. Similarly, how is the municipality supporting the work that you're doing? Are they actually supporting that work through resources? We had earlier this year our Spotlight in Maine event in Torrington, and Mayor Carbone really highlighted the role that the municipality can play in revitalization efforts. And we're actually going to put the link in the chat if you're interested in hearing her talk about all the actions initiatives that she has really led in Torrington to lead their revitalization. Similarly, when we talk about community stakeholders, is to not forget about our public safety partners. And the most high performing areas, we really see public safety viewing themselves as an economic development partner to revitalization. So where are you with that? Are they on the same page? Are you in agreement with how public safety should be involved in your downtown? Board of directors. So whether you are a nonprofit organization or a separate entity like a BID or an SSSD, or maybe you're a municipality that's focused on this, having a board of directors or an advisory board or a commission that is specific to the work that is happening on Main Street is critical. Really having that governing, guiding board is really important to galvanize resources, bring all the stakeholders together. And we want to see this board of people to be active and represent the different groups and stakeholders and lived experiences that our Main Street, kind of incorporates. Then once we have that board of directors, they're creating that strategic plan. They're creating that strategic plan that will guide the work that we're doing, and that it is aligned with the assets that you have, the branding that you're going with, and being able to hire someone to put together a work plan. And of course, no plan can be complete without funding. And so how well funded is your Main Street program? There can be a lot of different revenue sources. If you're a BID, that can be your tax revenue dollars, but it also can be grants, it can be sponsorships, it can be fees for service, it can be a contract with the municipality. There's a lot of different ways for an organization to fundraise for itself. We're not going to go into depth about fundraising today, but being able to have multiple revenue streams for the efforts of your Main Street are critical. We want to see funding streams that not only support specific initiatives and projects, but can support the overall capacity and management of the organization to continually maintain and be the steward of your Main Street. And of course, you need to follow good financial management best practices. You hear stories of community projects failing because of lack of financial oversight. This is really critical. If the work of downtown revitalization is coming out of the municipality, you'll already be following the best practices. But if you're a nonprofit or another type of entity, it's really critical that you set up these best practices from the beginning. And of course, who's going to be doing all this work? So this is, again, something that we're going to bring up time and time again, but at Connecticut Main Street Center, we are strong proponents and highly recommend that every Main Street has a full-time paid dedicated staff person to oversee the work and to see it through. This is critical because if we're focused on just a volunteer doing all this work, burnout is a very real thing. This is a very complicated job with a lot of moving parts and players. So a volunteer can burn out easily and not have the reward that they need to sustain over time. Similarly, if it is a part of an employee's job, say in economic development, but they have other things that they need to look at, they're not going to be able to have the dedication of the focus and of time to really do the work that is needed on Main Street. And of course, you need volunteers. So in the most high-performing Main Streets, we see that full-time staff person delegate a lot of the tasks to volunteers who have direction, have focus, and are supported in their volunteer work. And when you're doing all this great work, you need to make sure that you're sharing the good word, that you are tooting your own horn, that you're bragging about all the great work that you're doing. This is something we actually are seeing here in Connecticut, that a lot of our Main Street groups are not promoting the great work that they're doing regularly. And so this is something that's really critical to the work that you're doing, is to share out to all your stakeholders the stuff that you're doing. And similarly, are you regularly communicating with your stakeholders through consistent channels, social media, newsletter, or depending on your stakeholders in different ways and how they can be reached? So these are the high level areas of organization. And so now we're going to actually hear from our first video. This is a Great American Main Street Award winner from Metuchen, New Jersey this year. And I want you to listen and hear all the different points that we just brought out of an organization.
If I had to summarize our work in the fewest words possible, it would be welcoming, walkable, inclusive. That's what we set out to do 6 years ago, and that's what we've delivered on in Metuchen.
We moved here because it seemed like a really great environment to raise a kid in. Great public school, something smaller, something near a train, and Metuchen just kept coming up to the top of the list.
Everybody wants to be part of something that has a story, and I think Metuchen affords you that.
We were made by the railroad because people could work in New York City and live here. It really was the place to be in its time, and fairly, it's the place to be today. The more recent history of Metuchen is, especially in the last 30 years, is it really had a dip. Businesses were like revolving doors. You know, they'd open and they'd close and no one knew what to do about it. So what happened is two members of the Borough Council, Allison and Sarah and Jay Muldoon, came together and said, look, what can we do here?
And the more that we learned about Main Street and the 4 points approach, we said, you know, that's what we need to do.
One of the reasons why Metuchen has been so successful is that they have a strategic plan that they use very closely to help guide their actions and where they're going to focus their resources.
So we're going to build downtown housing by our train station, and we're going to also set up a Main Street program. But they said Main Street wasn't enough. We need a Main Street program and also stable funding. So they established what we call a SID, a Special Improvement District. And with that stable funding, but also the passion of the volunteers and the Main Street approach, that was the formula for revitalizing the town. And sure enough, we've seen over 387 apartments, $170 million of investment, and 150 business starts in the last 6 years.
You could almost get emotional thinking about the work that these people put into this town. There are many volunteers that put these events together, that work with the businesses to ensure their success. These things don't just happen. They happen because people are so dedicated to this place.
We want to be able to have access to programming that folks would not otherwise get a chance to see for free. Whether it be wrestling, big movie nights, step dancers, Lunar New Year dragon dancing, all of those things help people to kind of see and get access to things as a third place.
During the pandemic, without the MDA, I can't imagine. We hardly lost any businesses, and we had businesses opening towards the latter part of the pandemic, so it's remarkable.
During the pandemic, 75% of the businesses that have opened have been minority and women-owned. I'm also proud that over 60% of the grants that we've given out have gone to women and minority-owned businesses.
My business, Creative Twist, is all about events. Without the MDA's like grants and help and just even ideas, you know, and support, there's no way we could have done it.
They've worked very hard at creating an atmosphere where all different kinds of businesses can feel welcome and feel like it's a possibility to open and be successful here.
When you come here, you see that, hey, this is an area where there's equity, where there's room for a lot of different people to participate, and they have the tools to even thrive.
We really wanted to make sure that we took steps, aggressive steps, to help ensure the survival of these businesses.
We had restaurants cooking meals that were then delivered to people in need. So without the MDA, that wouldn't have happened.
And basically the way it works is we match up existing restaurants with people who may be living in a shelter or other places where they have need. and we deliver those meals every week. And really the heart of the program is this, you know, with food comes dignity, and when we can extend that to the people who need it the most, while also helping our businesses stay open and remain in town, you know, that's the kind of win-win opportunity you don't get often in life. It used to be a business opened, you know, maybe it found its customers in its market, maybe it didn't, and then it closed 6 months later. But with the MDA and use of the Main Street approach, we were able to get what the businesses needed, when they needed it, where they needed it, so they could be successful. And that's what's made Metuchen stand out from just about every place else.
Awesome. So let's hear from you. What are some of the things from Metuchen, New Jersey, as it relates to the organization point of Main Street Management, did you hear come out? Listed here are all the big categories that we've brought out. So what did you hear? Strategic plan, absolutely. Volunteers, walkable, funding. Yep. Transit, yeah, collaboration, yeah, all this great stuff. And so this is definitely what I heard from the video of what we just discussed. They absolutely have their municipal support. We heard from the mayor. They had a strong board of directors. They had a strategic plan. They had a full-time staff person. They had funding. They had volunteers, all that good stuff. And Sue, yes, dedication, absolutely. I love these videos. We're going to hear 3 more of them, and the dedication that comes out and the emotion is really awesome to see. So let's move along. Let's go to the next point, which is economic vitality. And so this is about restoring our economic value. This is diversifying our district's economic base. It's working with our downtown property owners and business owners. And then now let's break this down. It first starts out with any plan for economic vitality is to really understand your district. And we encourage everyone to first start with taking inventory of your properties, businesses, landmarks, parking spaces, green spaces, public art, and so much more. You really want to be able to quantify what your district is made up of. What's going on here? From doing these inventories, you can really pull out some great analysis of what's missing. What do you have? What can you take advantage of? Then it comes to historic preservation. Historic preservation is a fantastic economic driver. It's sustainable. And so what is your ethos of historic preservation in your community? How are you reusing? How are you supporting these buildings that sometimes are vacant, sometimes are underutilized, sometimes are very unsafe? Housing. So housing is critical. And one of the things that you'll notice in all these videos is that they all touch upon housing. Housing is critical to economic vitality to, one, provide jobs, but also provide customers for these downtown businesses. That is what we've seen, especially in the pandemic. Main streets across the country that had a high density of housing around the main street, they survived. The downtowns that just relied on corporations and offices, they are really struggling. Housing is critical to the resiliency of your main street. Vacant lots and storefronts, we all have them, but what are we doing about it? So do we have a plan to fill those vacancies? In the meantime, while that plan is being developed, is that space maintained? Are we maintaining the grass? Are we doing pop-up parks? Are we doing pop-up stores? Making sure that even though we have this vacancy, we have a plan forward and we're maintaining it while we wait for its new chapter. Recruiting businesses. So this is about not just taking any old business that we want to see, but let's be a little strategic about it. Let's have a wish list. What are the businesses that your community needs and wants? This is where, when we've done that inventory, we can see those gaps and we can understand what people are looking for. Property owner engagement. This is critical. This can be such a sticking point and such a thorn in your side in Main Street if you have a property owner who you're not be able to engage with or work with. And so are you engaging your property owners, not just when there's a problem or when you want something for them, but are you trying to, if it is a problem property owner, are you trying to convert them into being a partner with you? Having that consistent engagement is really critical. Attracting development. And so what we're talking about here is that you're easy to do business with. It's easy to find the permits, the people who you need to talk to get things done, the incentives that you might have, the rules. Maybe there's signage guidelines that these businesses need to find out. You want that one-stop shop experience for investors, whether that's small business or other types of investors. And of course, we have our small business support and ecosystem. How are you supporting your small businesses? Are you providing grant programs, technical assistance, incentives? Purely, are you making connections within your community? Hey, Mr. Business Owner, you really need to talk to Miss Business Owner over here because you guys can help each other out. It's creating that ecosystem of support to see them succeed, not just from ribbon cutting, but to stay for a very long time in your Main Street. So next, let's hear another video from Danville, Virginia, and let's hear how they're underscoring this work of economic vitality.
There's something very, very special about the people in Danville, Virginia.
I have seen it since the beginning of its Main Street journey, and it has come so far since that time.
The history and the culture of this place are really special.
Back in the day, Danville was thriving. We had 5 tobacco companies in Danville.
Then we had, of course, our textile industry. That was the balance to the tobacco industry. Dan River Fabrics employed thousands of people, generations of people. It was great while it was great, but then, of course, we saw collapse.
People were afraid to come down here. So everything was empty, vacant buildings just sitting there.
Really, I think the change began because there was a developer who was interested from out of town. And so they flew into the airport and decided before they wanted to come to the meeting that they would drive through the downtown and take a look at the community.
It was just not the best looking place. And once they saw that, they said, hey, if this community doesn't think enough of itself to invest in itself, why should we invest in it? That was a wake-up call for the community.
You can sit and you can dwell on what could have been, or you can think of what can be.
What has happened over the last 12 years, the city has invested $50 million in public money, but the return on investment has been fantastic. The outcome has been $300 million in private investment, and so we're extremely excited about the future. It was evident immediately that we needed more businesses downtown. They had already started the conversion of many of our tobacco lofts and a lot of our second stories into loft apartments, and those were fantastic. But again, we knew that we needed more businesses downtown.
You are sitting in the Fashion House studio, located here in the River District of Danville, Virginia. So the Dream Launch program is a great program for an individual who is seeking to have a business within the River District.
It is an entrepreneur boot camp, 6 weeks entrepreneur boot camp, and once you're finished with that, you're eligible to pitch for funding to be able to open your brick and mortar business in downtown Danville.
It was like a win-win. So that's when I sat down, did the business plan, and I did my pitch, and I won. Surprisingly.
Everybody here pretty much knows that this has been a dream since 2016.
To date, through the Dream Launch program, more than 450 people have taken a class on how to open their own business. 126 people have taken our entire workshop. We've opened or expanded 18 new businesses through the Dream Launch program in the last 4 years. We've given away $500,000 in funding.
I love my relationship with the River District Association. They let me know that You have the business, but we're not just going to let you go. We're going to keep on checking in on you. They really did set me up for success.
More than 75% of our participants are women, veterans, or Black and Brown owned businesses or potential new business owners.
This is the place to be. A lot of lofts. I think we have over 2,200 people living downtown now.
I love the fact that what our downtown used to look like, it doesn't look like that anymore. I see a lot of diversity in backgrounds, in genders, in race, in everything. And I just feel like that's a powerful thing because the downtown is the center of your city.
First you pour your foundation and you let it cure, and then you can build your house upon it. You know, the way I look at the Main Street 4-point approach is organization is that foundation, and everything with promotion and economic vitality and design is the rest of that fantastic house that we get to build. Everything here is done with so much intentionality, especially in the redevelopment and the revitalization. It would be very hard for you to walk into any redeveloped space in downtown Danville and not see elements of all of that history.
Danville still has a lot of great warehouses that haven't been redeveloped yet. So even though we're talking about a Great American Main Street Award today, in 5 years, it's going to be even better.
So it goes back to what they said. If we're willing to invest in ourselves, we're finding that others are willing to invest in the community too.
We are the special place that we talk about. We are a Great American Main Street.
So what did you hear from that video from Danville as regard to economic vitality? What are some of the things that you saw? One of the things that really struck me about this case study of Danville, Virginia, is what the gentleman said about the investor. If you don't see yourself worthy of investing in yourself, why should I invest in you? And that is something that we see sometimes in our community, is that there's this kind of waiting anticipation for this kind of savior to come in and invest, put that huge store in, right? The Starbucks, the Trader Joe's that will revitalize our Main Street. But the fact is that it starts with us. It starts with small actions. And so, what I saw in this story from Danville, Virginia is, one, they knew the history. They knew what was going on in their district, all the assets that they had of all those warehouses. They're preserving these great buildings. They have housing. They're bringing in that $50 million municipal investment turned to $300 million of private funding. I mean, how amazing is that? And of course, their awesome small business support program that they have is really, really exciting to see. So let's go on to our third point, which is design. So design is really all things visual. This is about restoring our physical value. This is the first impressions. It's the safe, clean, attractive Main Street that we love, right? We love when we go to a pristine downtown, right? And so let's break that down into what that means. First things first, sidewalks. Sidewalks make up the vast majority of our streetscapes and therefore really make the most impact. We care a lot about the conditions of our sidewalks. Are they smooth and flat? Can people easily get around with people different mobility? Are they in wheelchairs? Are they parents with strollers? Just a personal anecdote, being a new mom, I quickly learned, wow, these sidewalks are rough when I can't walk to the coffee shop without losing half of my drink in the stroller because how bumpy it is, and this is just kind of one of those things too, when we talk about Main Street management, is that inclusive lens. Are we thinking about all types of people and how they interact in our Main Street? And not only do we care about the condition of our sidewalks, but are they wide enough to support other uses like outdoor dining and sidewalk furniture? Again, just to bring up our Spotlight on Main event in Torrington, in the talk that the mayor gave, one of the first catalytic projects that they did was do a sidewalk streetscape. And they really saw the return on investment in property owners then investing in their own buildings to match the beautiful new sidewalks. Similarly to sidewalks, what makes up the rest of what we see with our eyes, right, is our building facades. And so are they restored? Are they safe? Are they adhering to their original historic design? Over the period of urban revitalization, we've seen boarding up of these beautiful historic details. Are they being uncovered? We want to make sure our buildings are looking great and are maintained. Similarly, we're looking at graffiti and litter removal. Do you have proactive steps in place so that if graffiti is found or if there is litter piling up, you have the partners who will immediately take care of those? And how can people easily get in and around your main street? How can they get to you? How can they get around on your main street other than a car? Is there different types of public transit options available? And of course, we're talking about green spaces when it comes to design. We're talking about parks, but we're also talking about the trees that may line your streets and flower planters that may really make your sidewalk pop and be beautiful. Really, any space where there can be, some type of like organic material. Is it being maintained? Is there a maintenance provider that's making sure that those flowers are looking beautiful for the whole season? Are they being seasonally changed out? We really care about these green spaces. Parking, always a hot controversial topic, right? There's never enough parking in most people's perception. But what we have found is that there actually could be enough parking, but it's not being promoted. So it's not being promoted and there isn't enough signage to direct people how to access the parking. So before we go and build a new parking garage or, add new spaces or something of that nature, let's do an inventory of our parking and let's make sure we're really promoting and people know about the parking options that already exist. Public art. Public art is more than just murals. It can be musicians playing on the sidewalk. It can be sculpture. It can be interactive exhibits. It could be pop-up theater in a green space. But public art really brings a life and vibrancy to our Main Street. So how are you incorporating it? Is it a part of your strategic plan? Similarly, we can look at lighting almost similarly as of public art. So we actually had last year a fantastic webinar. Highly recommend everyone watches it. We'll put the link in the chat for you to watch after. But it's this concept that lighting is more just, we got LED lights and that's it. But lighting can be a very strategic tool that draws people in, makes people feel comfortable and safe, but is also beautiful. And so can we think strategically about our lighting choices and to really make our Main Street pop? Of course, there's signage and wayfinding. Is it easy to read? Is it in good condition? Is it actually seen as an economic development tool to keep people circulating in your Main Street? And of course, we have window displays, right? These are tied to our buildings and are the window displays of our merchants beautiful, attractive, being changed out seasonally. A lot of business owners struggle with this. They may not have that skill set. And if they don't, are we as a Main Street giving them resources and technical assistance to help them create those beautiful window displays? So let's hear next from Howell, Michigan, and hear how design has played out for them.
So as a child, I knew of Howell, and that was back in the 50s and 60s when Howell was truly an agricultural city.
Howell's come a long way over the years, and now you're starting to see young people move into town.
Over the life of the Main Street program there, they have really been able to focus on the right business mix for downtown, getting people living downtown that patronize the businesses there.
As soon as I came here, saw the community, got to meet a few of the folks, I fell in love.
You know, Howell, I think, represents all that's best about our Michigan communities.
We have really worked hard to preserve our past while making sure we're keeping our eyes on the future, and that is shown through the tens of millions of dollars in public and private investment that have been poured into our historic buildings.
Everything from, you know, the theater, the pub there, and putting the cornice back on the top of the buildings.
Our Howell Opera House is definitely a center of activity way back in the early 1880s. Now it still serves as a cultural center for the downtown in just a little bit of a different way.
And they're seeking grants and donations to rehab the second floor and return it into a performing arts center.
And having that in our community in conjunction with the historic Howell Movie Theater, they serve as cultural bookends.
The owners have split it into 2 screens, doing special events there. So it's nice that we retain that kind of historical look.
People come in and they know that this building has been here servicing this community in some capacity for almost 100 years. It's overwhelming.
We definitely wanted, as an entire community, to offer some sort of incentive package that would entice future businesses to preserve that past. So we offer facade grants.
We restored the original brick on the facade of the building. There was both front and rear facade that had to be done.
We've leveraged those grants quite effectively thanks to the Main Street program. Howell Main Street is right front and center on everything that we're doing.
When I first started at Main Street, the thing that spoke to me the most was how one individual can work an idea and then 10 years down the line, it's still there.
Design and EV are kind of probably their biggest focus areas, so really embracing the art culture that they have there.
We're getting calls now from the Detroit Free Press, from the Lansing area media outlets saying, what's going on? Because we know Howell has a lot happening.
There's a lot of things that go into opening a business, a lot of things that I didn't know or wasn't prepared for. The DDA was great to deal with, but to have somebody like that you can bounce ideas off us and get feedback from, it's a tremendous resource.
Well, I think Main Street for Howell, they have really embraced the methodology, and it's volunteer-led, and when volunteers take ownership in that programming, they have the buy-in and they want to see it followed through.
We have a very strong volunteer base, between 400 and 500 volunteers who are really the lifeblood of the organization. We usually bring in an average of 5,000 volunteer hours per year.
It's going to keep growing. We've got new things coming in all the time. Our buildings are filling up, and it's a great place to be, and it's just going to continue to grow.
More of the same is what I'm excited about. I think Howell has a unique character, and it's grown from its farming days into what it is now.
The storefronts are filled with unique shops. The volunteer base is there to make things happen. So I think it's just the combination of everything that really puts them in the spotlight to be a Great American Main Street Award winner.
So what did you hear from Howell? Maybe that they explicitly talked about, or what you observed in the video footage? Yeah, public art. The things that I definitely saw were their focus on the building facades and the historic preservations. In their sidewalks, I saw some really cool sidewalk furniture. I saw trees. I saw some nice lighting. I saw consistent signage and nice window displays. Perfect. Have plaques along the way for self-directed walking tour. Awesome. So as we go on to the last point in the 4 points, which is promotion. So promotion is about restoring social value. So this begins with understanding the attitudes and perceptions people may have of us, and then creating programming that positions our downtown as a destination. So let's break that down. So first, we start with attitudes and perceptions. Perception is reality. We just had a really great webinar not too long ago from Beatrice, Nebraska, and we'll put the link in the chat here for you to look later. But this webinar was all about defeating negativity. And one of the key points that really stuck out to me was that as economic development professionals, we have to see the glass half full. We have to be optimistic. We're seeing all these projects come online. You know, our job is to move forward, to progress, but the majority of people who are in our line of work, they don't see that. And so if you are completely ignoring any potential negative perceptions of your downtown and just focusing on the positive, the things that you do are not going to feel authentic. They're not going to feel kind of grounded in reality. And so, you know, making sure that you take pulse, take survey of those attitudes and perceptions, and make sure you create strategies specifically to address those concerns. And so once you have that understanding of attitudes and perceptions, and you've done your Main Street inventories, as we discussed in the economic vitality, that's where you can really start to create a brand that uniquely positions your district. This is super critical to differentiate ourselves and to give people a reason why they should live, visit, or do work in your downtown. So a great quick example of this is from Bridgeport, and they have a branding initiative called Colorful Bridgeport. And we're going to play this quick video so that you can see how they are using this new branding to position themselves.
We are colorful. We are Bridgeport. We are past, present, and future. We are a city rooted in the deep history of innovation, growing into collaborative and community-focused changes that will plant the seeds for the next generation and the next. We are artists, innovators, makers, entrepreneurs, dreamers, students, teachers, parents, children. We are over 100,000 individuals. We are one community.
We are colorful.
We are colorful.
We are colorful. We are colorful.
We are colorful. One community united for the purpose of telling our story, of shedding light on the beautiful, daring, honest, authentic, spirited, cultural city that connects us. One community flourishing at the intersection of commerce, community, and culture. One community of friendly and eclectic businesses, residents, places, and spaces. One community focused on economic development for all. One community where everyone is welcome.
You can see here when you have a strong branding, then now all of your key messaging and campaigns can all tie together and be in alignment. The other part of promotion are the retail promotional events and activities. So these are the things that we're doing to highlight the services and businesses offered downtown. The goal of these events are to drive sales for our downtown businesses. So these are the walking kind of tours. These are, bingo kind of opportunities or scavenger hunt things to get people into the door of your businesses. This is a lot of times what we see a lot of Main Street programs focus on, very critical, but you also will notice this is just one component of a lot of different things that a Main Street could be working on. Similarly is our special events. And so these are the events that draw in potentially thousands of people to our downtown. They require a lot more planning, a lot more kind of resources to have happen. And sometimes there's a fundraising component to them. Sometimes we see that our small businesses don't like these big events because it doesn't translate into sales for them. And so if that's the case for your event, how can you bridge that gap? How can these special events draw also traffic to your small businesses? So let's hear from our last video today from Hammond, Louisiana, how promotion has played a really big key point into their revitalization.
When people come into our community and you engage and you welcome them, you know, we're South Louisiana, we hug. we want you in our community.
I think people come to Hammond and stay in Hammond because they can feel the love that Main Street has for Main Street.
The quality of life, I feel like it's been a best kept secret. We have just a wonderful little city.
When we first moved here when I was 12, there was not a lot going on in downtown, and then it actually got worse. There was a Penny's downtown and a dollar store downtown, and all those things moved away to the mall, and so there was nothing.
Hammond was one of the first 4 Main Street communities in Louisiana when it started in 1984. And since that time, they've been very forward-thinking in everything they do. They've been early adopters of anything that could be beneficial to their downtown. In Hammond's case, it's really been due to the local people.
Well, I like the fact that there's more family-oriented things, like today, the Arts in Bloom Festival. It's a way for the community to come out and interact in different places because we love Luma Coffee, you know, that's our coffee place. And hey guys.
And the food's crazy, man. There's multiple restaurants. People come from out of town just to get away from their normal surroundings, have a great meal, enjoy a walk around downtown, and then it's an attraction. It's a destination is what Hammond has become, and we're just so proud of it.
I'm so lucky to be part of the downtown. We have 2 or 3 festivals and things going on a year, and that helps to bring a lot of new people in town. And once when they come the first time, they keep coming every year, and that helps a lot to everybody.
With the inclusion of also having local artists set up at stores, the wine walks, things like that, music like the Blues and Barbecue Festival we just had. I was here for the first Hot August nights, and that along with the Starry November nights have been really, really big business, especially with the Columbia Theater opening back up. Those are our really good selling points to get people here in town.
Hammond Main Street actually stepped in days before the Columbia Theater was gonna meet the wrecking ball, and we saved it. We acquired funding and used tax dollars to help renovate that building, and we actually donated it back to Southeastern. I think for us, that's the biggest example of historic preservation. A lot of towns have a lot of good theaters, but you haven't been to the Columbia Theater. It's a gem.
That was another thing, bringing living spaces down here, not just businesses. There was this big turn and twist, and it was a little slow going initially, but it really has been worth it. So worth it.
It is a small-time vibe in a big city. We're 45 minutes from New Orleans, but we live in just a small pocket of Louisiana, and it's Hammond, America. It's wonderful. If you know it, you live it. That's what I feel for Hammond, America.
Railroad Park was a very sad public space. There was lots of potholes, the grass was very overgrown, wasn't accessible for all people, and through lots of public input sessions we came up with Railroad Park. It looks like Hammond and it feels like Hammond, even though it's new, which is why I love it. And it's another people-centered place that we're developing to get people out and about and to make them appreciate town.
We're not finished. There's always another spot that we can help focus someone on. Maybe your business can go here. Truly, I found that when people feel the sense of you wanting them to be there, they're coming.
I think you can very much tell when you go into a community that's a Main Street community. You recognize that something is different about this downtown, that this community cares about their downtown, and that they want it to be successful. The general people may not know what that is, but if anybody knows Main Street and knows what Main Street is about, they would recognize that, oh, this community must have a Main Street organization in it.
So what did you hear from Hammond, Louisiana about how they're using promotion? They exemplified all of these things that we talked about. We heard very clearly the attitudes and perceptions people have of Hammond and how they're turning that into the branding and positioning and all of these different events to attract people to their downtown. One of the things too to think about events is that if you're in the beginning process of the revitalization and you maybe don't have the buildings ready yet, you can use events as kind of these anchor events to draw people in and traffic in. So you can really think strategically about the types of events and promotions that you do. So let's go on and talk. Let's just recap a little bit about what we've gone through today. So we have gone through the 4 points of Main Street management, which is organization, economic vitality, promotion, and design. Design and promotion with the stars there. And so what's next? How can you implement these 4 points today? So these are kind of our super high level, quick next steps that we recommend that you should do if you want to get started or you want to further the work that you're doing. 1, you got to start with dedicated management. Of course, we want to see that one paid professional who is doing this work and driving it forward. But if you're not there yet, you at least have a dedicated group of people that are driving the efforts. And if you're a Connecticut Main Street member, highly recommend that you schedule your Main Street assessment, which will go into depth all of these points that we talked about today. So you can email Carl, his email's right there, to get yours scheduled. Next, you really want to do your downtown inventories. And from there, you're going to be able to conduct a SWOT analysis. That SWOT analysis is going to inform a strategic plan and to help you decide what you need to do next. And what we heard really from all these videos is that you start small and you build momentum. That is really the key to Main Street management, is that you start somewhere and then you keep on moving forward, and it will evolve over time because more people are going to want to get on the train with you and get on the bandwagon and see you revitalize your Main Street. One of the quick resources that we have for our members is our how to collect, maintain, and leverage your Main Street inventories. If you're interested in getting that webinar and the resources to help you along the way, shoot your email in the chat box and we'll get that to you. So we are at the hour. So I do want to still have some time to answer questions at the end here. So if you need to jump off, I want to respect your time, but I'll stay on for a little longer to answer some questions. But we do have a few announcements of what's coming up next at Connecticut Main Street Center. So want to make sure we get to those. First, we want to invite anyone who's interested in investing in improving and making commitment to their Main Street to join our network of over 80 communities that we have around the state. And coming up on our calendar in August 24th, a point that we just talked about, we're going to have a webinar focused on 7 steps to hire a Main Street executive. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into that topic. In September 14th, we'll have our next Spotlight on Main event in Windsor, Connecticut. That's going to be a great opportunity to hear what's going on in Windsor. On October 12th, we're going to be talking about downtown wayfinding and signage as an economic development tool. And save the date for October 26th. We're going to be talking about marketing and the intersection of influencers and how you can leverage them for your Main Street. Check out our website, the link to check up all of our upcoming events. And we're also super excited to announce our Main Street Accelerator program, which will be launching in January. This is a 6-month action-oriented leadership development program that will go in depth on Main Street management, but it's all anchored around you completing a project for your community. So come with a project idea or come with a problem that you're trying to solve for your community. And this is an accelerator program that will help you identify those projects, figure out your task, and help you implement the project with technical assistance and coaching from Connecticut Main Street along the way. So the link is in the chat box. If you're interested in learning more, click on that link. And of course, thank you to all of our sponsors and program partners. And when you exit this webinar, you will get a link to fill out an evaluation. Would really appreciate you filling that out so we can continue making great educational programming for you. Thank you so much. I am now going to look at our chat because I saw some questions come through, and we'll just take a few more minutes to.
Kristen, I would also like to add, so at the beginning, when you asked how many people were familiar with the 4 points, quite a few people were not. And so I just want to let everybody know that we do on our YouTube channel have a 4-point webinar series playlist. So I'm going to, I just chatted that out. If people want to learn more about the 4 points, they can check out our playlist, which goes into more depth on all of those points.
Absolutely. Thanks, Christine.
You're welcome. And then we had a lot of great interaction today, a lot of comments. So some of the questions have been earlier in the chat. I wrote them down if you want to go over them real quick.
Sure.
So some of the questions were, can you address parking for communities with a lot of sprawl but no mass transit? And do we have any additional resources? So I know you touched on it very briefly here about parking, but is there somewhere people can go for additional information?
Yeah, so first, it's hard to always kind of give specific advice without knowing the context. But the idea of sprawl and creating kind of a walkable node is always kind of this really critical step to take. I do believe that we have some resources on our website, but this is a topic that we will be addressing later on in the year to talk about more resources for parking, because it is such a critical issue.
I know it comes up almost every single time.
Yeah.
And then kind of tied up together were questions. GT had a question about examples for criteria for how you determine success. And then of course, if there's a list of the 80 points in the assessment, because for us, that's how we measure success kind of literally is with our assessment tool.
Yeah, so we don't have the list available of all of the different points that we have. It's very detailed, but if you're a member, you'll go through all those 80 points verbally. And in terms of measuring success, you know, one, it really stems from what are your goals and what are your priorities of a community, and what are you trying to go after? So if your vision, for example, is to be a very family-friendly place, then the metrics that you'll look for success are going to be specific to that. Maybe you care a lot about how many parents and children are out at night. How many, strollers do you see? How many kind of businesses cater to children are available or to youth. So, finding those levels of metrics are very specific to what you are trying to achieve.
Then Eleanor had a great comment that I'm sure you can add to, which is there's putting a plan together and then there's implementing it, and they're not always the same thing. And we have definitely found that to be true as well. You want to talk to that a little bit?
Oh yeah. I mean, for those that are still on here, like how many comprehensive or master plans does your town have that are collecting some dust? It's something that happens because the fact is that it's easy to create a plan, and it's easy to create beautiful mock-ups and visions of what you want to do, but it really comes down to the implementation. And again, to not sound like a broken record, but that really comes to the dedicated Main Street management that you need. That one person who is responsible for implementing that strategic plan. And that's just it. That's how it needs to go. There needs to be dedicated resources. The great main streets that you might have experienced, don't happen organically, and they don't happen overnight. They happen from continual investment and dedicated resources to see it come to fruition.
I think that's also, frankly, another plug for organizations statewide, like Connecticut Main Street Center and the other statewide Main Street programs throughout the US, because we have a lot of people here from other places, because that's where we work with our members, where we use the assessment tool to try to help take them from the plan to action in a way that is incremental and not overwhelming, because obviously you can't do everything at once. So it's just having that additional sounding board of like, where do we start? How do we do this in a phased approach that makes sense for us and for our town and our downtown?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because there's so much to do. There's always going to be something to do, but it's finding that one starting point. And it could be really small, you know, for some communities, it's putting the investment for a sidewalk streetscape redesign, but for others, it might be starting a farmer's market, you know, or it might be getting a mural up, you know. It's really finding what your community needs to get the ball rolling.
It doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in, so I think it's a good time for us to wrap up. As noted in the chat box, we will be sending out links to today's presentation, so you'll be able to view it again and to share it with others in your communities.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope that you really got something out of this and you know the 4 points now, and we're inspired by all the great examples around the country. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.